Eachine Red Devil, here we go. Pretty nice punch out. Wow. Come back. Come back. Thing's crazy. All right, let's go. Alright guys, welcome back after the flight test. Unfortunately for me, mine burnt up in a blaze of fury in the field. I had a crash and I tried to take off back out of the grass, and when I did that it flipped over and it must have had enough air mode to fry my front right motor. So mine's done for now, but I'm going to go ahead and finish the review anyway because it does deserve a review, and I want to give you guys all the tips I can for setting yours up and making sure yours flies right out of the box. There are some things you need to do, so this review will be very helpful to a lot of people out there. Now this is the Red Devil. This is the case that it comes with. It's around $102 on the Banggood website right now. It is very similar to the Sailfly X Happy model. Are you guys sharing frames with Eachine or something? Very strange, but yeah, so it's a kind of a mashup between the Sailfly X and the trash can. So it has a trash can type top mount, and what's really interesting to me is that they did take some notes from the last drone cams video where I told you guys to go ahead and zip tie down your frame, and it's pretty slick. They used red zip ties on the top of the frame through the bottom plate on the carbon. It does appear to be 2mm carbon unibody on the bottom, and I doubt you're going to break this frame. It's really, really robust. It has a lot of reinforcement on the internal part of the frame and arms. You've got 2 layers of carbon there. where you have two struts of carbon on each arm, which is really nice. So classic design. It has the Caddx EOS 2 camera on here, and that's what was on the Gep RC Phantom toothpick. Nice camera, especially for what we're doing here with the toothpicks. It also has the Crazy Bee F4 Pro on board, and it has a VTX on here going from 25 milliwatt all the way up to 200. So 200 milliwatt, if you're looking for something that'll go way out there and you want a decent flight time, this will get you above 3.5 minutes flight time on a 450. This one did motor down versus the toothpick from Gep RC. They had 1103s on there, 8000 kVs, and these happen to be, let me show you these just a little bit closer up, and they have what appears to be screws on the bottom instead of those M2 type of bolts, and 1102 8700 kV open bottom motor design. The magnets feel pretty good in these actually, and you'll notice that I switched out the props too. The other thing I would suggest is maybe getting a more rigid type of prop. I like the 65mm props that have a little more rigid feeling to them than the super flexy ones. Seems to give me a little bit less of a tune on my flight controller, and it just kind of gives me more jello and vibes in the camera. If I use a stiffer 65mm prop, I have a better flying quad. Now, the next thing that I do like about this version of the trash can slash Sailfly X slash Red Devil is the fact that they do have plenty of tilt in this camera. Look at this, you could go way up, you could almost go to 90 degrees with this camera. It has these little adjustable bolts on the side. You can tighten that up and make it and put it pretty much wherever you want. Now, one thing that was a little bit of a bummer right out of the box, the first battery that I flew, you can see here on the screen, I did get some jello out of this camera. And the reason that I got the jello was because, well, it has that original trash can frame on here, which had a floating front end. If I remove this piece of VHB right here, you'll see there's nothing under here to support that camera. So it has a lot of bounce. So that bounce translates to jello. So what you have to do is take a little piece of VHB like this and just roll it up and stick it under that camera, and it will look like you're flying a different quad at that point. You'll have no more jello, reduced by about 90% probably. Now, after you have secured your camera here and switched out your props, the next thing you want to do with your Red Devil is take your zip tie out of this box right here. It's a nice little case they give you. They do give you two red zip ties. So the first one you can take and put here, and you want to take some heat shrink, put around this antenna right here, and that way it doesn't fall down into your props when you do crash. The next thing is that since you have it zip tied off here and heat shrink, that it's not going to pull this little connector off right here. See that little gold connector right there? That is a UFL connector. It's not an MMC-X like I would like to see. This one is just snapped on right there. If it comes off, you're going to have to really work to get that back on there. You're probably going to have to take the whole canopy off to punch this back down. There doesn't seem to be a good access point here to be able to put a driver in to get it down again. You might be able to go in through here, but not a lot of access to the UFL connector. Now we're looking on the bottom of the frame, and this one is 105 millimeters. It is a True X type of design. It's sort of a hybrid. You have some dampening up here for your flight controller. You have just a little bit of rubber dampening top and bottom. And this flight controller ESC combo, it's actually an all-in-one type of flight controller ESC. If you're not familiar with the Crazy Bee line, they've had some issues with some of these boards burning out, and I don't know if I was a victim to that today, but my front right motor is no longer working, which is kind of a damn bummer. But I also like that they did do a capacitor here right into your XT60 wire right there. Super nice they did that. That will clean up the video a lot. And if we look at the bottom here, I'll just pull this back so you can see it here. We have two buttons. The one on the right hand side right there in the schematic is your boot button for flashing your firmware. The one on the left right here, that's your bind button. And the way this binds up, it binds up in D8 mode. You can also use the CLI to make it bind up in D16 mode. You're going to plug a battery in, you'll see these lights start flashing, put your radio in bind mode, and then press the button and hold it. and all the lights will go solid. Red and white lights will go solid, and you'll have a solid bind. And what some people do like about these boards is the fact that a lot of this is plug and play here. So the motors are red and black labeled wires, and they just plug into the ESC right down on the bottom here. You can take these in and out. If you have a motor go bad like I did, this front one, all you need to do is get another motor, unplug this one, and plug a new one back in, and I should be good to go, unless I burned up the ESC. That's going to be the challenge. I would typically order a motor first and see how that goes. You can also try to hook it up to BO Heli to see if all 4 ESCs are loading up inside BO Heli. If that's the case, then it was the motor. One other thing that I did change is that it did have a TPU battery holder on the bottom, and I'm not a big fan of those because my larger batteries won't fit. So what I did was take a couple zip ties left and right here and just put a simple strap around it, and you'll be able to put your larger 3S450s on there if you decide to run something as large as a 3S450. Probably my favorite battery of choice would be the 3S 300 milliamp from Happy Model. I'll try to put some links down below for those. I buy a handful of those because this baby flies awesome on 3S 300 milliamp. It's the right power to weight ratio you're looking for in these 1102 motors. Now the Red Devil is rated from 2 to 3S, and it does say that it's a 6 amp ESC on this flight controller, but it does say it has a current meter with a max rating of 28 amp on there, built-in 5 volt regulator with an LC filter, which is super nice, and it has voltage detection. And let's just go ahead and test the shafts and see how hard these props are to get off, see if I can do it by hand, and yep, we can do it. Nice that you can get your props on and off by hand. The shafts are not too large. They are 1.5 millimeter shafts, not so big that it's going to pull this motor belt up. You want to hold the motor itself with both fingers here, your thumb and your index finger, to make sure this bell doesn't move when you're pulling on this motor tab or this motor stem right here. You don't want to get slop in your motor. And you can go through and check each motor just to see that there is no slop on any of these motors, and right now they're perfect. And they do give you quite a bit of stuff inside this case that comes along with it. It's pretty cool because you get tons of extra props in here, and you can fly these props, they will be fine. After you secure the camera, you'll have way less jello. You get a little screwdriver, and use this little screwdriver to go over all of the motor bolts on the bottom and any other screws on the frame. You want to tighten everything down before your first flight. It's going to be super important. You also get some extra hardware in here. You get some rubber dampeners and what looks like a long post for the stack right here. If one of these break on either side, there is, I believe, 3 of them in total. One here, and one here. If you break those, you do have some backups in here. You also get an extra piece of, it looks like VHB foam in here for a battery pad on the bottom, and some extra nylon nuts here, because these little guys, they get lost all the time. Once they fall off the table, really hard to find. And you get some smaller hardware here too. This is a little tiny steel screw right there. And what's pretty sweet is you get a 3S 300 milliamp battery in there, and this is Eachine branded, but it looks just like the Happy Model 3S 300 milliamp that I'm flying all the time. So this one fits on there. What I love the most about these little 300 milliamp batteries is, man, these things charge up in like 10 minutes time on your standalone charger. You do not get a charger in here, so there is no way to charge these batteries. But as I've suggested before, the ISDT Q6 is my charger of choice. And also in the box, you get a really nice full color instruction manual. And what I noticed right away is that in the very first paragraph up at the top right here, it says, please use Betaflight Configurator 10.4 version to setting the Red Devil. That means that you're going to have to revert back to Betaflight 10.4 because the 10.5 or 10.5.1 configurator will not work. It says it right on there that you can't make any changes and save any changes to your flight controller. So to set up your quad with your radio, you're going to need to download that 10.4 configurator, and I'll try to put that link down below for you. It's kind of hard for me to find, but I found it in about 5 minutes on Google, and there is a Mac and a PC version available. Now also, this is a solderless type of setup, and I have some of that foam stuck to this thing, but if you look at the flight controller ESC combo right there, it shows you where all your motors plug in, M1, M2, M3, M4 right there for all the motor labels. You have a plug for your VTX, your 200 milliwatt VTX plugs in right here, and your camera plugs into the VTX. So there's literally no soldering you need to do right here with this setup. One thing you will also need to do is to avoid yourself from damaging your ESC, where your battery lead goes to the terminals on the ESC down bottom right here. And you make sure that you take a zip tie off your battery cable, because if this gets pulled off, it'll break the tabs off the ESC and you'll have to buy a whole new flight controller ESC combo. And other than that, in the manual, we have FrSky X here and FrSky D for D8 mode. We have D8 mode available, which is going to be the default mode. If you just want to bind this up and go fly it right away, just do it like that. If you want to do the D16 mode, they have some settings down here that you need to do. In the CLI, it says you're going to need to enter some kind of bind code procedure right here to get D16 activated. So follow along with these instructions to get D16 working. Now we're going to go ahead and turn on the scale, and let's get a dry weight with the quad only. The quad only is 38.7 grams, and maybe even around the same weight with my strap versus that little TPU mount. So looks like 38.6 when I bumped it. But let's go ahead and put that battery on there. This is the Eachine 3S 300 milliamp. And this should get you about 3 minutes flight time, just regular flying. It looks like 64.4 grams total takeoff weight, way under 100 grams. And now let's grab the Sailfly X and let's just weigh this one more time. 38.5. Sailfly X 35.8. So a little bit lighter here, but they do have not quite as good as a camera on the Sailfly X. So Caddx EOS 2 versus this AIO old school camera on this one. So I do like this camera better on the Red Devil. And now let's go ahead and weigh the Full Speed, the original toothpick from Full Speed, 45.4 grams, and the Turbo Bee from iFlight, 52.7 for that one. And I believe that the Phantom, I don't have it here with me, but the Phantom was around 54 grams or so. So that about wraps up my review, guys, for the Red Devil from Eachine. It is a pretty fast flying quad. I would recommend kind of bringing your rates down to about 7.0 on all the different axes inside Betaflight for your PID profile. That's just going to make this fly a little more docile. It's just, to me, it seemed like it was tuned really high. And I'm used to about 7.0 on the super rates, and it's a fairly mild rate. You don't really need 8.0 on the super rates on this quad. It's just a little bit too nimble, and you kind of overfly your maneuvers. So I'm looking for a long, straight, and sort of predictable type of line when I'm flying. So I'm very used to 1102s and 3S battery combos, and that's the way I like to do it. But I do like the fact that they took the initiative to put the better camera on there. I guess the only bummer about this one for me was that I had to make a few changes and modifications to get the jello out of the camera right away. The Happy Model Sailfly X does not have that problem, but with this one you can't change the camera angle. So that's where they missed the boat there on this TPU mount, and a lot of people said this was a pretty ugly printed TPU mount, which I don't really care if it protects everything. But I'd like to see maybe the Pro version of this one, or the version 2.0 coming up, will have an adjustable camera. So it's nice that you have a little nicer camera on this one, and it's adjustable. Also, everything is solderless on this design, and you have a 200 milliwatt VTX. So I think for around the $100 price point, this one's not bad for what you get. So I'm going to rate this one at around, I guess, an average of a 4.5. Maybe a 4.4 if I was to be totally honest, maybe taking off another point that I had to do a few things on the setup. But I think if you do what I showed you in the beginning of this video, you'll have a pretty nice flying little devil. But that's it for the Red Devil today, guys. I'm Justin Davis. Take care and have an awesome weekend. I'll see you on the next one.